game against the Packers. Looked like a pretty darn good pass to A.J. Green, but he simply never turned around. The Cardinals lose a tough one, 24-21. Cardinals and Packers now both 7-1 on the season. No longer do we have an undefeated team in the football league. All right now we want to welcome in our second Hall of Famer to our show, Sam Farmer of the Los Angeles Times. Sam, thanks so much for joining us. Got to ask you, before we get to anything else, what'd you think of that football game tonight and how it ended? Okay, obviously we are having some difficulty hearing from Sam Farmer right now. We're going to try to check with his microphone and see if we can reconnect with him in just a moment. In the meantime, as we try to do that, why don't I bring the boys back in and we continue to talk about this football game tonight. With the Cardinals losing this game, their first loss of the season, could have won this game if A.J. Green had turned around. Does it change your opinion? Are the Cardinals the best team in football, or maybe not so much anymore?
Well, I think it does, Kyle, because now they're all bunched up at the top because they all have one loss, and you saw the Packers with another team with one loss, the Rams now, the Buccaneers. I mean, there's some really good teams out there. Dallas Cowboys are good. So, I mean, now there's no clear-cut team that's going to run for it. Everybody's going to be challenged now, and after tonight's game, you can tell why. Because you come prepared, play each and every week. You don't know what's going to happen, and of course, the Packers are a good team as well.
I don't know, Vince. Maybe they are who we thought they were. The Arizona Cardinals for the last 2 or 3 years have been struggling to play any games of any significance that would make us consider them a playoff quality team. And then this year they come out and they run the football real well. The young quarterback is playing at a real high clip. They get some new people in there to having some success. And then they go and they lose a football game like this. Now, my thoughts are, okay, well, I didn't see a whole lot of what you did to get you there. So what is your identity? If you're going to be consistently in the top 5, you were in the top 5 running the football, averaging 136 yards a game, and then you come out and you don't attempt to do that? Well, where is your identity? If your identity is to run the football for 136 yards a game and then have Kyler Murray do his thing with all the imported receivers that you have, and you get to a game like this and you abandon all of that, then maybe you aren't headed in the direction that we thought you should have been headed in.
Isn't that the life of being an Arizona Cardinal? You go 7-0 to start the season, you lose one game, and then already Jackie said, you know what?
They are
what we thought they were.
No, Jackie's right on that.
And Ron, I want to mention that, before this game started, you thought that the Packers would have a hard time winning this football game, considering all of the losses, no wide receivers, and yet somehow they found a way to beat the Cardinals.
Now, talking about they are who we thought they were, well, I think that Aaron Rodgers is exactly who we thought he was. Here's a guy, year after year, seems to do it, even though they won't bring in big-time, big-name receiving help for him. He gets it done. And today was a perfect example. And, Vince, you brought it up as we were watching the game. They were doing things in different formation, different ways, different styles. They were so creative, but they were getting the job done. They were finding a way to get everyone the ball, but just in different ways. And I thought that was impressive. And again, I thought Arizona got away from the run, and I thought they made sure that Kyler Murray, who's had a very high completion percentage, they made him stay in the pocket. They said, we're not going to give you those big chunk runs. You're going to have to win this game throwing all day long. And in the end, that's what sank them.
And, Ron, you see the same amount of completions, but twice the amount of yards for Aaron Rodgers. So that's how efficient they were. But they were doing it with screens. They were doing it with bubble screens, different formations, draws, run. They were very well balanced tonight.
You figured Aaron Jones was going to have a big part in this game, and he did that, rushing the football and also catching it on those screens as well.
So did Dylan.
No doubt. All right, I'm told that we've got Sam Farmer back, the Hall of Fame writer of the Los Angeles Times. Sam, great to have you. I assume your microphone is working, and let me ask you again, what did you think of this football game and how it ended tonight?
Amazing ending. It was bizarre that it ended that quickly. I mean, it was so abrupt. And Jackie was pushing my mute button, I think.
No doubt about it.
No, I mean, it could have been a landmark moment for the Cardinals in their history to stone the Packers at the goal line like that, come back down and win the game. And then to see it end the way it did was, good for the Rams, but certainly not good for the Cardinals. But
Sam, I got a question.
Game.
I got a question for you, Sam. You know, you picked the Rams to win in the rematch game against the Cardinals, and after tonight, I almost have to agree with you. But in the beginning, I was going to think, why would you have selected that? Is that just because the way Matt Stafford's playing and because of what you like from this offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had that was a strange game. They came out so flat in that first game against the Cardinals. They were 8-0 under McVay against the Cardinals. They had never lost to them, and I just think Arizona would have a real tough time beating this Rams team twice with Matthew Stafford. And I've been waiting for the bottom to drop out on Arizona for some reason. They've stayed healthy remarkably because everybody's in the line of fire there with that offense. And adding Zach Ertz really helps. But I just don't see them beating a division team, as good as the Rams twice in a season when they hadn't beaten them since John Fossil was the head coach.
Wow.
Yeah. And let's not forget that no DeAndre Hopkins in this game, or at least a very limited DeAndre Hopkins in this game. We saw him on that first, what looked like a touchdown pass and should have been if he didn't have a face mask. Imagine how different this game would have been. But
no J.J. Watt.
No J.J. Watt. So they certainly had.
It's so remarkable. If you look up and down who the Packers were missing, it's amazing what Aaron Rodgers was able to do. You know, there's one point in the game when he turned around, he thought he had a horse collar, and he had the presence of the mind to find the referee, shoot him a look like, hey, this is a horse collar. I thought the game must move at half speed for this guy.
Well, it must move at half speed, there's no doubt, but he should have been whacked thoroughly right there, asking for a call that certainly he didn't. It just felt like, it felt like a hard horse collar, but it wasn't. Listen, I got a question for you. I just moved to Los Angeles. I'm a big football fan. We got the Rams in town. We got the Chargers. And this local writer is telling us that we could possibly look forward to seeing these teams meet at SoFi Stadium, their home stadium, in the Super Bowl. Are you buying that?
Yeah, that could happen. Obviously, they're good teams. We're not even at the midway point of the season. And, the Chargers have been there once. That still feels like a bit of a pipe dream. For me, neither of these teams are leading their division right now, and so it would be quite a thing if you had the first Super Bowl back in LA in this stadium with the two LA teams going at it. But still, to me, is about a 100-to-1 shot.
Mm-hmm. Have you been impressed with Brandon Staley as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I'm watching Ted Lasso. And watching Brandon Staley, and they remind me a lot of each other. He's got an amazing approach. I tell you, I didn't expect this from him. I didn't know what to expect from him. We didn't get to know him too well with the Rams. But to think that 4 years ago, this guy was a Division III coach, it's insane. And Justin Herbert is so poised, and it's like if he ever had a sophomore slump, it must have happened in practice or something, because he's never had a step back.
No.
I think that defense can come together. I still think the Rams are a better team, but the Chargers, they're coming up pretty fast.
Yeah, although they did get thumped pretty good in Baltimore a week and a half ago. Be curious to see how they respond after that loss as they play the Patriots this weekend at SoFi. Let me ask you this, Sam. Regarding the Rams and the Chargers, of those two teams, which do you think is better suited for a Super Bowl run this year, and which one is really suited for the long term?
Well, I mean, with a young quarterback like the Chargers have, that sets up really nicely for the long term. And I think the Rams, just based on their experience, now their quarterbacks never won a playoff game. But there are guys on that team who have played in the Super Bowl, guys who have played in championship games. They are just more experienced. And I really think Matthew Stafford this feels like his year. It feels like it's really coming together. You saw the big difference between Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford in this last week, and that Jared can keep you in the game if things are going well, but Matthew Stafford's the guy who's going to make the game-winning throw when he needs to make it. And the way he is able to stretch the field, it wasn't too long ago we were talking about the Rams having this collection of number 2 receivers. Now they have at least 2 number 1 receivers in Cooper Kupp. And I think Van Jefferson's coming along really well too, but Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, I think, could both be number 1 receivers on teams. So that's pretty remarkable. And the fact that Matthew Stafford's doing this without a running game, without much of a running game at all. Now, he did that in Detroit. Their last 1,000-yard rusher was Reggie Bush in 2013, but we thought he was going to have a running game in Los Angeles, and he hasn't had that, and yet the Rams are still rolling. So I think they're going to wind up being 7-1 in a couple of weeks. So.
How sick and tired do you think Matthew Stafford is of being reminded that he's never won a playoff game?
Yeah. Right? Well, that ends now. I mean, that'll end this season. I truly believe that, and I think this team is pretty well positioned to make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if there's a really an overpowering team in the NFC right now. So. There are a lot of really good teams.
Well, you know, some teams may be adding on shortly. We've got a trade deadline coming up November 2nd. We saw the Cardinals, and what a great acquisition they got in tight end Zach Ertz. We saw him make a couple of big plays tonight. Do you see anybody else on the move as we approach that trade deadline?
Well, I mean, it'll be very interesting with Deshaun Watson and what happens there. And if any team, you know, he's radioactive right now, but he's a great quarterback. And if any team makes that move, that will be, that's the one to watch is, you know, does a Carolina step up? Do we see Miami make a move for Deshaun Watson? And, or does he stay put? And then next year, of course, you know, I look at Aaron Rodgers and I really wonder if he'll wind up in Denver. I think that could really happen.
How about that? Hey, one last question. Do you think that, what did you think about the Kenny Young trade?
I hated to see him go. He's such a great guy. You know, reuniting Kenny Young and the general manager, George Payton from UCLA, new general manager of the Broncos. I know George thought a lot of Kenny Young, but he was a playmaker. He made he made a play in the Detroit game. I think he had a sack in that game and played with so much heart. I think it's great for him and going to that Denver defense. But I'm sure he loved playing in LA and playing in SoFi Stadium. So sorry to see a guy like that go. He's a really good locker room guy.
No doubt about it. Well, Sam, it's been a pleasure spending some time with you. Thanks for stopping by. Sam Farmer, everybody. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good seeing you,
All right, Sam.
And guys,
Hey,
how much are we to blame for Kenny being traded? You know, we were on the post-game show.
Don't
with him
say that.
on
You
Sunday.
can't say that. Don't even think about it.
We asked him to come on
Nobody's
our
going to come and
show,
talk to us again if you say
Weren't you shocked?
And
Yeah, I was
It was
shocked.
shocking to
And
see that.
he was so impressive on our post-game show,
Unbelievable.
right? So he's
Unbelievable.
just extremely, you know, glib and charming, and yet
And knowledgeable. Very
Ron,
aware.
as we were talking to him, as we were having a conversation, that trade was in the works.
Yeah. You know what they say, right? NFL, not for long, right? Just when you think you got everything figured out. But like we talked about earlier, though, Kyle, when that situation happens, it's one of two things. They've got someone else that they want to slide in there, okay? Or there's a need for a guy like that, and there was a need for him in Denver, and maybe a little bit of both. So,
Well, we certainly wish him the very best, and we hope we will continue to get guys.
And I hope he doesn't hold it against you.
Exactly.
You just never see that coming sometimes.
All right, we're going to take a quick time out here. Coming up, the Rams continue to roll up. Next date is in Texas. They're going to be checking in on the team's headquarters as they prepare for the Texans, who will also check in with the Chargers. That's next.